this evening. Thank you very much. My name is Lise Andriana. I'm the board chair, and welcome to our first online AGM. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we felt it was important to ensure the health and safety of all of our board, staff, and members. So we're not meeting in person this year. A few housekeeping items before we start. All attendees are on mute during the meeting. You can ask questions by clicking the chat box and typing in your question or comment. During the meeting, if you would like to move or second a motion, you can type the word into the chat box. Thirdly, you will be asked to vote on motions, which will appear on your screen as polls. You will have 15 seconds to select either approve or oppose and click submit. The poll results will be shared on the screen. We will be following our agenda, which is now, or is about to be, up on the screen. There we go. Thank you very much. So we'll be following the agenda. Gwen Lang will act as secretary, and I'm advised by her that there are, how many, Gwen? Oh, I can't hear you, Gwen. Oh, 18 plus 11, okay, I see. So we've got 29 members present, and this number constitutes a quorum according to our Constitution. We're ready to go. First order of business is I would like to have approval of the minutes from 2019 AGM, which starts on page 4 of the annual report, which you received earlier. Would someone please move to accept the minutes of the 2019 AGM? And sorry, I'm not seeing. Okay. Do we have someone who has moved to accept the minutes?
Barb has moved and Mark has seconded.
Ah, thank you, Gwen. See, I can't see that. Thank you very much. Do we have any discussion? Okay, no. You've heard the motion. The poll is up on the screen. Please vote now and submit. Okay. Okay. The motion has been approved. The Pump House annual report contains full copies of all of the board members' reports, and I will summarize the chair's report for you now. You recall Charles Dickens, thank you, Cheryl. You recall Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. It starts with the paragraph, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." And so went the Niagara Pumphouse Art Center's year of 2019-2020. We began the year off to a big bang with a capital improvement thanks to Ontario Trillium Foundation. We undertook a major renovation to increase accessibility. By March, we had a new space to learn, celebrate our love of art, and to share our beautiful building and landmark location. Many thanks to the staff and volunteers who made the renovation possible, with particular thanks to Barb Van Zant, Alex Tops, Lenora Richards, and Gail Kerr, whose extensive contributions made the completion of this major undertaking possible. Then March came along and COVID forced a closure. We were preparing to celebrate our reopenings and we were forced to close during stages 1 and 2. The board and staff quickly learned to adapt adopting Zoom meetings, and limited art classes. Difficult times require a laser focus on what is important. The Niagara Pumphouse Art Center, we turned our focus to safety for our people, our visitors, our staff, and our community. These were our primary concerns, and steps were taken to implement all safety protocols. People, support for our community members and volunteers, many of whom are in the vulnerable group due to age or pre-existing health conditions, and staffing costs were assisted through federal programs, CEWS, and CERB. Technology. As COVID restrictions went from short-term measures to the new normal, virtual programs became increasingly important and continue to be. COVID provided the ideal background to review our governance documents. Our board roles and responsibility statements were updated, policy and procedure manual was updated, and finally a reserve policy fund statement was approved, ensuring a plan for moving forward and protection for our stakeholders. If success can be measured by the people who support an organization, then the Niagara Pumphouse Art Center is a success story. Every day, our staff work diligently and with a smile to serve our community. Volunteers show up and lend a helping hand for tasks small to large whenever they are needed. And the board, made up of high caliber professionals who use their talent, their expertise to steer us through the most difficult year in our history. We are a passionate group, and for that I am very grateful, and my thanks go out to all. With prudent management, the Niagara Pumphouse Art Center looks forward to serving our community for many years to come. And with that, I would like to turn the meeting over to our treasurer, Ron Ferguson. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Lise. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. I hope you've had the opportunity to review the financial reports, which form part of the annual report sent to you earlier this month. Because what I would like to try to do is relate these slides to the details in that report. The total revenue that's reported on this slide represents revenue from all sources. The revenue-related expenses represents the total of all expenses that are tied to or related to the revenues received or earned, plus the additional renovation and the marketing/advertising costs, which were reported separately in the annual report as quote-unquote expenditures. Now, the total revenue of $313,386 includes the Trillium grant of $143,500, the Canadian wage subsidy of about $13,400, and an increase in donations of about $35,000. Hence the year-over-year increase of 40.44%. Now, if you remove those items from that figure of $313,386, the total revenue is $121,500, a reduction of 45.5% from 2018-2019. Similarly, the revenue-related expenses, $208,382, include renovation costs of a little under $167,000. So if you remove that item, the revenue-related expenses is a little under $42,000, a 47.4% reduction from 2018-19. And then the general expenses, which include the staff and overhead expenses, are detailed in the annual report. Now, the major contributor to that amount are the staff costs. In 2018-2019, wages, salary costs were a little under $101,000. But were reduced to a little under $58,000 in 2019-20, a reduction of 42.4%. So the net result is a surplus of $10,180, a spectacular result in my opinion, given the experience of being closed most of the year for renovations and the impact of the pandemic. All involved are to be thanked and congratulated. Now the next slide shows the financial position, very simplified, showing a little under $95,000. Now that compares with a little under $83,000 last year, and basically reflects the impact of our surplus for the year. I move to accept the treasurer's report. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Mark. Any discussion? You have seen you've heard the motion. The poll is on the screen. Please vote now and submit. Thank you very much. Okay, Gwen, is that tabulated?
No, you can't submit unless all three motions. Maybe we will have to wait until all three motions are made.
Okay.
So that would be another, yeah.
All right, then the next business is the appointment of the chartered professional accountants. And I move to appoint Bridgman and Dirksen as our external accountants to prepare our financial statements for the next fiscal year ending August 31st, 2021. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Mark. Any discussion?
I think that was seconded by Patricia. Patty.
Sorry. Oh, that was an earlier motion. Okay. So Patricia, thanks, Pat. So any discussion? Well, the poll. Okay, so motion.
I think the motion will have to move, as Gwen said, to the third, which I'll do, Ron, and then we can do them all at the same time. Okay, yep. Thank you. And if we could move the PowerPoint to the budgets, thank you. So in typical years, every year, we have a single budget to present at the AGM. This year, we have two. Budget A reflects, and this of course is all due to COVID. So due to COVID, we found it necessary to provide two budgets for the coming year. The first, Budget A, which you are looking at, shows expected revenue and expenses without extraordinary revenue items. It reflects a reduction in programs, special events, and offerings due to reduced capacity. Budget B, if we can have the slide move over. Budget B illustrates expected revenues and expenses should our application for the OTF Resiliency Grant be successful. We expect to hear the results of that application by mid-December. Because the amount was a significant amount, it makes a huge difference to the results. I move to accept proposed Budget A to be replaced by proposed Budget B if the Ontario Trillium Foundation Resiliency Grant is received. Do we have a seconder? Barb, I see Barb has seconded. that motion? Do we have any discussion? Yeah, I'm seeing none. So the poll is up, and now we can vote on all three motions. The motions are accepted. You've heard the motion. The poll is up on the screen. Please vote, which we've done. The motion is now approved. I will now turn the meeting over to our director, Rima Bowles. And thank you, Rima.
Thank you, Lise. So I am thrilled to be back, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank our board of directors and staff for all their efforts in what can only be described as a very challenging year. I was encouraged upon my return, in particular in three areas, by our community support in program registrations, in membership renewals and donations, as well as the volunteering through the renovation closure and pandemic. So firstly, in programs, I'm happy to report that we were able to run 43 programs with a total of 410 students. That's students of all ages, children, youth, and adults. We had a very successful Healing Arts for Kids summer camp, which was a free virtual camp, which had 111 children and youth from the Niagara region participate. We were also able to offer 19 free community programs, which this year consisted of our opening receptions and family-friendly programming, which was translated into a virtual format for this year. The second area is the donations and membership. So in a year when we truly needed increased community support, we are so grateful for each membership renewal and the increase in donations, which helped us through the year. One donation in particular, I just wanted to point out, we had a very significant donation by our longtime supporters, Jeffrey and Lorraine Joyner, who donated $25,000 to the pump house. And in recognition of this donation, the main gallery was named the Joyner Gallery. Thank you very much to the Joyners for their continued support. And thirdly, the area of volunteers, which was beautifully outlined by our volunteer relations chair's report. But I just wanted to highlight that our incredible volunteers contributed 918 hours this year. Thank you. We continue to rely on volunteer support, so every volunteer is greatly appreciated. The next area I just wanted to highlight was our exhibitions. We had 4 exhibitions this year. Again, there's a detailed outline in our gallery and exhibit chairs report. So I just want to provide a brief summary here. It started with, last fall, we started with the exhibition by Ronald Boakes and Trench Art, followed by Nicola Wajwoda, and then Robert Bora was our last exhibition before the renovation closure, which was then followed by the pandemic closure. And so it wasn't until the summer in August for our reopening renovation tour that we had our 4th and final exhibition for this fiscal year, which featured the work of Beverly Barber. And if you remember, Beverly was our first place winner in the 2019 Walker Industries Art Competition. So we were thrilled to have her work in the Joyner Gallery during our reopening renovation. And as part of the exhibition, so since we weren't able to offer as many exhibitions in the galleries this year, one of the new initiatives was a fundraising online auction, which was successful. And the generosity of the artists was so great that we actually currently have a second online auction on now. It's up until November 16th. So I encourage everyone to take a look. There's some beautiful artworks, and bid generously. And then the last and final area I want to outline was our COVID-19 health and safety, which we take as a top priority at the Pump House. We have, it started with preparations when we moved from stage 1 to 2 for the reopening renovation tour. We made the initial preparations for reopening, which was followed by the development of an operational plan, which followed our federal, provincial, and municipal guidelines. And then currently we continue to adapt as needed and have developed health and safety protocols to ensure the health and safety of our staff, visitors, volunteers, students, and instructors. We have increased our cleaning, especially of high touch surface areas, and reduced capacity. So this includes reduced capacity of our visitors overall at the Pump House. Our classes are running at reduced numbers, and events are limited capacity, and we encourage, so for instance, Artful Treasures, which is coming up, is going to be a timed entry event so that our visitors are spread out throughout the day in smaller numbers. So we will continue to monitor and adapt any of the COVID related guidelines and adapt to our policies and procedures. So this sums up my report, and I will hand it back over to Lise.
Thank you, Rima. Well done. And lots of work for the staff, so thank you very much. We're really grateful. Now we come to the question and answer period of our meeting. So I would invite you to submit your questions in the chat box. And while you are doing that, we'll field a question that was sent in advance and emailed before the AGM. The question is, how will programs change due to COVID? Rima, can you take that one for us?
Sure. So I hope that in my summary, I shared a bit of how programs have changed, but I'll just outline, I guess, in a bit more detail here, the impacts COVID had on our programming. So in the spring, we started with virtual classes, which were followed by the introduction of in-person but outdoor classes in the summer, as well as the virtual format. So that was our plein air classes in the summer. And then this fall, as the COVID, as we were able to open to the public, we also opened up our studios to small class sizes and then a reduced number of classes in studio, as well as continuing to do some virtual and plein air classes in the early fall. So these smaller classes, we've been offering them instead of seasonally, which we did traditionally. We have adapted to offer smaller offerings of classes monthly. So currently we have our holiday inspired workshops that are running throughout November and early December. And we're still accepting registrations. There's a beautiful lino cut print workshop coming up to make some holiday cards. There's a fresh greenery garland workshop, a star wreath, and beginners knitting that we're still have spots available. So we've adapted the programming to both the virtual format as well as just reducing the sizes and making sure that the health and safety of everyone participating is maintained at the Pump House. And we're continuing to do our best. We've applied for funding to purchase some HEPA air purifiers that we hope to have inside our studios just to increase the air quality at the Pump House. Again, just to ensure everyone's safety while they're participating.
Thank you, Rima. Very well. And the second question is, with COVID forcing us to have intermittent closures, What is the future of special events? So for the safety of our staff members and the communities, it being our foremost priority, this has caused many of our traditional fundraising events to be changed or canceled. And future fundraisers are being planned to meet the need for physical distancing, reduce crowd size, and to consider the vulnerable in our community. There's no doubt about it that the loss of some of our special events and our fundraisers have had a big impact, and I expect will continue to have an impact on the revenue for the coming year. If there is a bright side to this, it would be the offsetting revenue that we are hoping for and we're working very hard towards with Barb Van Zant's help in grants, and that is revenue from grants. That will make a huge difference for us as we have limited capacity to bring people in. There are several grant offerings out there, and we are, as we mentioned earlier, we're waiting for the resiliency grant to find out about that. In the meantime, we have just heard and learned about the town grant, the federal development, and thank you to the town for their support. This makes a big difference to the next couple of months and the pump house. The recent online auction, I think, is a really good example of how special events and fundraising is pivoting away from our classic art at the pump house and the fashion show that we've held in the past. And we're looking forward to doing more of that type of thing. And it takes a great deal of creativity on the part of the board and the volunteers. Thank you. Now, have we had any questions come in, since I don't see anything unless I'm just plain blind?
No, there are no questions typed in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gwen. Since there are no more discussions, the board reports are accepted as written. And our last item of business is the election of board members for 2020-21. Our current board consists of 8 members, plus our town representative, Wendy Cherapita, for a total of 9. Board members who are returning are Barb Van Zant, grants, Patty Knight, volunteers, Cheryl Morris, special projects, Mark Skeffington, exhibits, Gwen Lang, secretary, and Wendy Cherapita, ex officio and town representative. Re-election of the current board members for the following terms are myself, Lise Andriana, as chair for 3 years, Victoria Wisdom, marketing and sponsorships for 1 year, thank you, and Ron Ferguson will be retiring as treasurer. His replacement has yet to be determined, and he will be hanging in to help us out until we find someone, which is going to be very difficult, Ron. I hope you will join me in thanking each and every one of our hardworking board members. They deserve a lot of credit for getting us through a very tough year. And now I would ask that someone move to accept the current board members and those for re-election for 2020-2021. And I lost my checkbox. I see Susan and Carol Kitchen. Okay, thank you, Susan. Do we have a seconder? Marilyn Rivet, thank you. And do we have any discussion? And I expect we're going to have the poll. There we go. Thank you. Awesome work. Just wait for the results there. And the motion has been approved. Is there any further business? Sure. As there is no further business, I make the motion to adjourn this AGM. And do we have a seconder? Patty Knight. Thank you, Patty. You've heard the motion. Poll is up. On the screen, please vote and submit. And with that, this is the end of our 2020 AGM. Thank you for attending and thank you for supporting the Pump House. Very much appreciated. Good night to all.